Hello humans, it's Lorelei and welcome to the Tea Party. After those horrific and gruesome murders, I hope you've all rested well today because you're in for a wild ride. During the duration of this tea party, we'll be going over some of my thoughts in episode 2, the locked room mysteries and how to solve them, and we'll end off with a bonus round. Without further ado, let's get this tea party started. Let's start off with some quick thoughts from me. A lot of things happened in episode 2. If I don't keep track of them all, some are sure to just slip past me. And what I deem important may not be important. And what I deem as unimportant could seriously be an important clue. There is that dilemma. Unfortunately, there is only one of me, so this is a rather tedious task, but I endeavor to try my best. In any case, if episode 1 was a wild ride, episode 2 is like a roller coaster that throws me for a loop. We started with Shannon breaking the mirror that supposedly seals Beatrice's powers away, and ended with everyone dead. As always, there are curious references to how isolated Rokkenjima is and how everyone is a piece on the game board. While reading through the description of episode 1, I noticed how it mentioned, "Let us begin on the trodden road," suggesting that this game is one that they've played before. In both episodes or game boards, we do find similarities and differences. Notably, each death always occurs according to the epitaph, and a stake is rammed into each body. However, in episode 2, something curious happens. 2 stakes, Kumasawa and Shannon's, were lodged into their bodies in quite a rather shallow fashion, and so the stakes came loose. It really stood out to me, since nothing like that has happened before. Now it's happened. Twice. Perhaps just having experienced one game doesn't really say much about this, but I'd like to keep this in mind. Another curious thing is the suspicious discussion between Natsuhi and Kraus. They mentioned having Genji and Nanjo as their allies in association with never letting the greedy siblings come near Kinzo. Initially, I could not quite grasp what the conversation was about. I think you guys might remember me just being like, "What? What's happening?" And for the longest time, I was still very confused. But having gone over it again, it seems more like Kraus and Natsuhi are planning to tamper with Kinzo's health. Tamper is not the right word here, I don't think so, but I can't think of another word. But yes, they want to mess with Kinzo's health in order to keep him locked in a room. Of course, Kinzo appears to do well despite Nanjo reporting that he's going to die anytime soon. And as for Genji, maybe he is mixing him some poison with that green liquid Kinzo likes to drink. There are also many key events that stood out in episode 2, but if I were to list them all out, we'd be sitting here for another hour or so I'll keep things short and bring up my last interesting point for discussion. The night before the chapel murders, all 4 siblings and their partners meet with Beatrice in a chapel. It seemed to happen out of the blue, but it's possible that it was spurred by the first letter from the witch that was to be read aloud at dinner. Interestingly, I can't remember Rosa having read the letter aloud, nor could I find the scene of it in episode 2, since everything just faded into black afterwards, so I assume it was read aloud sometime in that period. Then there, that night in the chapel, all the adults of the Ushidomiya family, minus Kinzo of course, met with Beatrice. Without the key to the chapel, none of them can enter. But like the locked room murders, I start to wonder if I can really trust my eyes. The siblings do the same, openly stating their disbelief and respect at something Beatrice had said or done. Rudolph mentioned that she's proven that devils exist, suggesting that she had definitively proven something that used to be ambiguous to the siblings. Rudolph also says that he surrenders and resigns. Kirie, the one who seems the most reluctant to, also finally accepts whatever Beatrice wants her to. It's a parallel to what we see with Beatrice's demands from Battler and Rosa, in which she wants them to accept her existence. Without everyone's acceptance, Beatrice is blocked. Still, in any case, this meeting in chapel is mysterious as only Rosa makes it out alive. Furthermore, Rosa seems to have no recollection of meeting with Beatrice after this point in time. After all, if she did, wouldn't her first thought be to investigate Beatrice? Instead, she was extremely suspicious of everyone else. So really, it's just gonna remain a mystery for now. Before we delve into the locked rooms, let's go over Battler and Beatrice's victory conditions, as well as my approach to solving the locked rooms. Beatrice's victory condition appears to be making Battler accept her existence, and her loss condition is solving the epitaph. Battler's winning conditions include solving the murders using a human culprit, and in addition to that, he must explain it in a way that does not implicate anyone other than that 19th person. Of course, that last condition was added on by himself, so it's something Battler has to work extra hard for to prove. But I think for us as the readers, we only need to deny the witch's existence. As long as we don't give in to the witch, we will be okay. However, I don't know if this counts as a win. Beatrice did mention that we can't afford to keep drawing ties with her, or the matches will just keep going on. She also urges us to try and beat her instead of settling for a draw. However, no one has made any considerable effort on solving the epitaph yet, including myself, sadly. So unless you count my attempt to link Shannon's courage to the key in the epitaph, I'm really struggling here. In any case, this will be my approach to solving the locked room murders. 1. I will deny the use of magic. Number 2. I will only use human culprits. Number 3. There will be no use of hidden doors. Number 4. Anyone can be an accomplice. And number 5. Beatrice's read truths will be considered as facts, but we can use what she doesn't say to our advantage. Now we finally move to the very first locked room, the chapel. I won't spend too long on this since Battler's explanation was rather satisfactory. And in short, someone stole the key when Maria was not aware, opened the chapel, locked the chapel, and returned it to the original envelope. As for how 6 people might have been killed, poison is that classic murder mystery choice of weapon, so it's possible here too. And the 6 people who died may also be random, since everything is decided by the roulette. But I won't go into details on how the killings may have been carried out, since that's not within our scope of discussion. In any case, since the culprit had till sunrise to decorate the chapel, it's not impossible for a single person to stage such an elaborate crime scene. Moving on to Jessica's room, I think Jessica's locked room is still relatively straightforward. The culprit could have stabbed Jessica first, causing her to scream and alerting Kenan. After Kenan comes rushing in, the culprit that has been hiding in the shadows kills him. And as according to the read truth, he was killed in this room. The culprit then throws Kenan's body out of the window, locks the window, and locks the room with a master key. This master key could be their own, could be borrowed, could be stolen. When we come to the servant room, it becomes hard. It becomes harder and harder, for sure. This one was a lot trickier to solve, considering we have a total of 5 people in this room when Nanjo and Kumasawa were killed. Shannon should have died here too, but Genji managed to pull her back before her neck was slashed. My explanation for this locked room might get a bit wild, but hear me out, okay? Hear me out. I'm going to introduce the possibility of a hidden trap set up in this room. When the 5 of them entered the servants' room, it could have triggered a trap that would slash at them. In a panic, the remaining 3 rushes out of the room to report to Rosa. The culprit would have been waiting somewhere for them to come in to enter the servant room, so wait for them to leave, come in to dispose of the bodies. They take 2 keys into their possession, and let's toss the bodies out of the window once more. The culprit then leaves an envelope with the 2 keys in a room and locks the room with the master key that they may have stolen or whatever. And alternatively, maybe the culprit locks the room with one of the 2 keys, places them both in an envelope, then slides it under the door. In this way, you would still account for the 2 keys inside an envelope. Something interesting also happens with the bodies of Kumasawa and Nanjo, and it's the first time I've ever considered the possibility that the murders could have been conducted in a different order than what I first assumed. Although the 2 were killed before Shannon, Goda, and George, they are marked, according to the epitaph, as the last 2 murders. Whether this will come to mean anything, we will have to see, but it's also odd as, unlike previous times, the stakes came off rather easily, as if they weren't lodged deep enough to begin with. I wondered if it was someone different who placed the stakes. I'm certain the difference must mean something, right? Moving on to Natsuhi's room. This one is difficult as well. Goodness, it just gets harder and harder. Let's establish some facts. 1, there were 3 people killed. 2, they need not be killed in this room. 3, the 5 master keys are held by Rosa, who is in quotations. And 4, the room was locked and Natsuhi's key is with George. Of course, I bring up number 2, which is that they don't have to be killed in this room, but I didn't really make use of this point. Still, it might prove useful for future me to come back and revisit this case. Anyway, my theories get less realistic as time goes on, but at the very least, they don't rely on magic. Okay, here's the thing. My number 1 rule is not rely on magic. We are not going to accept the witch. I think there are multiple ways to approach this locked room, but for me, none of them are very convincing and rely a lot on chance. I'll share with you one. So, having known that Shannon, Goda, and George will be searching Natsuhi's room, the culprit approaches them in the middle of their desperate search attempt. Since it's likely going to be frantic, messy, and possibly noisy, the victims may not realize when one of them has suddenly been killed. Goda could have died first, being closest to the door, then Shannon, then George, who was at the farthest corner of the room. Goda being the first to die also means that the most threatening one has been taken care of, and in any case, all 3 are now dead, the stakes are placed, and the room is locked. But how was the room locked? Let me throw you for a loop and make use of the ambiguity of Beatrice's statements. According to the writ truth, Rosa was holding all of the keys, but Rosa is in quotation, suggesting that it may not be Rosa at all who's holding the keys. So maybe this culprit, working with the real Rosa, whoever that is, managed to obtain the master keys and returned it by using the window of the parlor. Rosa did check the parlor windows before leaving to examine Kumasawa and Nanjo's body, and immediately after examined Natsuhi's room. Unfortunately, by having to use Rosa to explain the murders means that Rosa could always have just killed everyone on her own since she does have a gun. But what if Rosa didn't know that her keys would be used in this way? What if the person she is assisting convinced her that it was for a greater good? Who knows? Many possibilities. Alternatively, we can make the assumption that Natsuhi has 2 keys since this was never confirmed by the writ truth. With this assumption, we can leave Rosa out of the equation. But this is also something that hinges a lot on, it's all assumptions, and that's really not good enough when we are trying to solve the locked rooms But at the same time, we don't have enough information to work with. There's a lot of ambiguous details, and that is something I want to use to my advantage when solving this locked room. After all, no one has stopped me yet. Beatrice has not stopped me yet, so I'm gonna keep doing that. And finally, we move on to the last locked room, parlor. The parlor's locked room was extremely hard for me to solve. Even now, I'm not confident in my solution since it relies on a hidden trap or mechanism to place the envelope. However, Beatrice mentions in her Read Truth that there were no frauds or tricks, which makes me wonder if this counts as a trick. It's a little ambiguous, but I'll have to roll with it. Let's review the facts. 1. The parlor door and windows were locked. 2. Rosa claims that there was no envelope on the table when she first stepped in. 3. She claims that neither her nor Maria had been near the table. 4. Battler finds the envelope at his usual spot. And so, if we don't want to accuse the 3 inside the room, then we kind of have to make use of the hidden mechanisms again. The envelope was perhaps placed by that hidden mechanism and was activated by the culprit once they left the room. If hidden mechanisms are not allowed, then now that Rosa is the only one with all the master keys, it seems that the only possible way to place the envelope on a table is for one of the 3 in the room to do so. But I don't like this reasoning. It seems logical, but if any of the 3 placed the envelope in the room, it would automatically make one of them a suspect. In this case, since Rosa has the authority, the blame will fall on Battler. This is possibly my weakest explanation, but I don't know. I don't know anymore. If this isn't accepted, if the hidden mechanisms and traps are not accepted, then my theory for the servant's room might crumble too. Well, that's it for my solutions to the locked rooms. I tried my best to come up with possible solutions, so feel free to throw me questions in the comments down below. If anything is not up to your satisfaction, I'll try my best to answer the questions that you guys have, but this is the extent of what my brain can handle right now. I will probably revisit the locked rooms in episode 1 before the answer arcs, now that I have a better idea of what's going on. I want to discuss a bit about the witch's score sheet as well, because something kind of interesting caught my attention. The last remaining 5 people are always noted as missing. Despite Kennen's body being erased, he is written down as dead. So then what does it mean to go missing? Could it be that Kennen's body was found eventually, therefore he was declared dead, while the last 5 people just vanished? But then again, can the witch's score sheet really be trusted? There are some variations between episode 1's and episode 2's score sheet as well, with Natsuhi, although being one of the remaining 5 to make it through the 8 twilights, she died in a duel with the witch, and it was noted that she died instead of her going missing. So episode 1 has only 4 missing members, while episode 2 has 5. I'm not sure how this will play a part, but it's definitely interesting to know. And now, let's talk a little bit about the characters, because I think the characters definitely do play a very vital role to this whole story. And we did see many good character developments this episode, particularly Shannon's. I'm really happy with Shannon's development, and I think you guys already heard me say it many times before, but I'm really happy that she is kind of putting her foot down and being the human that she wants to be, that she is. Anyway, a good number of characters also showed different sides of themselves, such as Jessica and Kennen, which made me root for them hard. Beatrice also played a rather prominent role in the beginning and showed us what a truly complex character she is. From her twisted and cruel ways of toying with the furniture to the innocent, childlike delight she had at receiving snacks from Shannon. It's also clear that she and Kinzo has a long history, and while they seem to hate each other, there's also that complicated feeling of something that adds to it. It's hard to describe in words, but Beatrice seems to think of Kinzo in a fond manner, as if reminiscing the past. It's an interesting insight to their relationship and to Kinzo and Beatrice as characters. Rosa and Maria's relationship also took a center stage this episode, and I had to hold back many tears when it was just the two of them on screen. I've mentioned this before, but Rosa and Maria's relationship is one that is quite personal to me. I know someone like Rosa, and I've been in Maria's position, so I heavily empathize with both of them. However, it's precisely because I can empathize with them that I feel so strongly about the way Rosa treats Maria. I only wish that both of them could have been given a supportive and warm environment to grow up in. And maybe then things would be different. And it's also really knowing that the author of Umineko, who is Ryu Kishi, it has experience working as like a social worker and has seen these kind of experiences firsthand, makes me respect him even more and respect how much hard work has gone into writing Umineko, especially characterizing Rosa and Maria's relationship. It's something definitely that I think if you've been in that position, you will understand how hard it hits. And it does, it hits hard. So I really appreciate that knowledge that he has worked with people in that situation. I'll end off with a brief conclusion. Umineko appears to be a detective novel at heart, but it also explores the depths of its huge cast of characters. Each episode offers about 20 hours or more of non-stop plot and character development, which means there's hardly a dull moment. I really enjoy seeing the characters grow, especially in Shannon's case, but it also warmed my heart to know that perhaps Beatrice is not this cruel witch that she enjoys playing the part of. In any case, it's been a thrilling ride through episode 2, and I'm super excited for episode 3. With that, I hope you all have enjoyed watching me play through Umineko. Thank you for the support through this past few months, whether it's through liking, commenting, or subscribing. Your kind words reach me, and I'm ever grateful. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care! Hello everybody, and welcome to the bonus round, the tier list. I've already prepared the previous tier list up here, but now we have episode 2 characters added to it. And I also want to emphasize that this tier list is just for fun. It's my opinion, but it's also just for fun, so don't come at me. And let's start. In the unforgivable tier, we have Kinzo, as always. Kinzo, he's not gonna change. He's not gonna move from his spot because he hasn't really shown much of his other side, I would say. He hasn't shown any sort of forgivable traits yet, so I'm gonna leave him in the unforgivable tier. Now, Rosa is an interesting one because Rosa has shown a bit more of her past, of herself, and the motivations that make her act the way that she does, especially towards Maria. But despite this, knowing her past and all, I still find it very difficult for me to forgive her. Not that it's my place to forgive her, really, but what I want to say is more that her actions, especially violently hitting and pushing Maria, is just a line that I won't cross, that I cannot condone crossing. So I'm gonna leave her in unforgivable. She's someone that I can understand why she's the way that she is, but still unforgivable. So I'm so sorry to all Rosa fans out there. She is still unforgivable to me. And now moving on to the asshole tier, we have Kraus, Natsuhi, Eva. Oh yes, we have Kraus, Natsuhi, Eva, Maria, and Goda. This is a tier with the biggest movement. But first, let's talk about Kraus. Kraus here is, he's gonna remain here still. Because he hasn't really shown much of himself this episode. And, well, it's not really his fault, really. But he's gonna remain here. He didn't show anything different. Natsuhi, on the other hand, even though Natsuhi didn't play a big role in episode 2, I'm very inclined to move her down a tier. And it could be biased. It's because I also have a big soft spot for Natsuhi. But also, when you put Natsuhi next to Eva and Rosa, she really seems like a saint when placed next to them. And now that we clearly see, we can contrast how Rosa acted in the leader position versus how Natsuhi acted in that leader position. You can tell that Natsuhi is more empathetic, understanding, and also more trusting than Rosa. And that's why I really like Natsuhi a lot more, and that's why Rosa's stocks are going down. Natsuhi's stocks are going up. So I'm gonna move Natsuhi down to the not asshole tier just because. Oh, I should move her all the way to the back first. Should I? No, I'll move her to the front. So I'm gonna move Natsuhi down one tier because, yeah, she has the asshole moments, especially towards Shannon. But also, when it comes to Shannon, it's not like Shannon didn't give her a reason to act that way. Shannon was a bit incompetent at her job. She's a lot better now, of course. But in the beginning, she was very ditzy and caused Natsuhi to feel very ashamed of her position as the head of, the housekeeping and all that. So I can understand where Natsuhi comes from. Next, we have Eva. Eva is actually gonna remain in the asshole tier because she actually seemed a lot worse in episode 2 when she came up to Shannon and was whispering harshly to her. It's so like Two-Face kind of behavior. I don't like that. So I'm gonna keep Eva there. Maria is a special one. She has her asshole tendencies where she laughs creepily and is very insensitive to how other people feel. But in episode 2, surprisingly, she was actually quite receptive to how others felt, like Battler, for example. Knowing that Battler had broken down, essentially, Maria had comforted him and became like a beacon of hope for him, or a source of comfort. And I thought that was very sweet of Maria, and that it shows that she does have empathy and she can empathize with how Battler is feeling, and that's why she acted the way that she did. That's what I think, anyway. So for Maria, I'm gonna move her down. She is no longer an asshole. Rejoice, everyone. Maria is not an asshole. And now we move on to Goda, the man that I have the most apologies for. Goda really showed how he is not an asshole in episode 2. That he is, in fact, a man that actually does care for his fellow servants, but I guess it really does come off as a very asshole way in episode 1 because he always has that pressure of standing out to be the very best. But Goda having defended Shannon in episode 2, that really stood out to me. And I really appreciate Goda for what he did. So I'm so sorry for all the mean jokes I cracked at Goda's expense. And I hope you guys will forgive me for that. But Goda, I'm rooting for you. And I hope that you will find peace in your next life. Now we can finally move on to the not asshole tier. After Goda, we have Jessica. Jessica is still in a not asshole tier. She honestly has not done anything that would make her be in the asshole tier. And Hideyoshi is also not an asshole, so I'm gonna put him here. George is also not an asshole. That's very straightforward. Rudolph. Okay, here's the thing. You know how in the tea party we saw a glimpse of Rudolph and how he treats Rosa. So Rudolph is like I would say arguably even worse than Kraus and Eva because of how he is so manipulative in the sense that he took on the worst of both his eldest siblings' traits and somehow is able to hide that asshole nature from all of them. So I'm kind of torn because he didn't show us much directly. All we have to go by is what we saw from Rosa's past memories. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that was really the true Rudolph or whether that was really just Beatrice's illusions. But I'm gonna add on the assumption that that is true, and I'm so sorry, but I'm gonna have to move Rudolph to asshole. I wish I could put like an in-between tier, but then a lot of characters are going to be in that in-between tier, so let's just keep things black and white for now. Asshole, not asshole. Kiria is not an asshole. She's not an asshole. I don't know what else to say. She hasn't done anything that will make her an asshole yet. Battler is also not an asshole. I think that's straightforward. Genji is not an asshole. I don't think so. I don't think any of the servants are really assholes. Nanjo also not an asshole. Shannon definitely not an asshole. Kennen is in that borderline of asshole and not asshole because of how curt he can be with people, but he definitely is not an asshole. So I'm gonna keep him here. Kumasawa also not an asshole. And finally, in my last tier, I did have a no comment tier because I haven't learned enough about them. But now I can put them into the appropriate tiers. Beatrice is someone that has demonstrated just how cruel she can be and how she loves to toy with people's emotions and love life. She did show us a bit of her innocent side too, but on the whole, I would say she's like 90% asshole. So I'm gonna put her in the asshole tier. As for Brincastle, I actually think Brincastle is quite a nice person. She is helping us, so she has to be nice, I guess, but she is rooting for us and she did comfort us, so I'm gonna put her in not asshole. She's not an asshole, definitely not. And now we finally move on to episode 2 characters that are new. We have a goat head. The goat head would be no comment because they don't do anything but obey Beatrice's order, so I can't really fault them for that. As for Lambda Delta, she hasn't really shown enough of herself yet, but based on what little that we see, it seemed that she was extremely cruel to Brincastle, but she is also she cares for Brincastle, but she also played games with her. And even now, Brincastle still seems to care for her as well. Lambda Delta, she also tried to cheer us up, so I'm a bit torn. Can I put her in no comment for now? I think next episode we will learn a bit more of Lambda, but I'm actually a bit inclined to put her in not asshole, but the thing is I don't really know the full extent of the relationship between Brincastle and Lambda Delta. So like what are they? What is their relationship? There's a lot to consider here. But honestly, between the 3 witches as of now, they seem to care for each other in their own way. And it's all kind of weird. It's a bit weird to me because I just can't quite understand what's going on. And now, I think the only ones left we have are the Stakes, the sisters. And honestly, for them, I would say all of them would be in the asshole tier list because of how crazy they are. But they're also Beatrice's furniture. So I also cannot fault them, but at the same time, I feel like they belong in the asshole tier list. Can I just move them up? Maybe I'll move up. Oh, yeah, maybe I'll put them all up in asshole. But their position is kind of in between no comment and asshole. Well, The difference between them and the goat head is that the goat head doesn't seem to be able to make decisions on their own. And wait, okay, I understand they have to obey Beatrice, but they also seem to delight in causing pain to others. And that's why I'm gonna put them in the asshole tier list. But yeah, that's it for my tier list this time. I'm surprised by how much I actually ended up making adjustments to it, especially when it came to Goda. Goda really did well. He did well. He was a shining example of a good character in a very tough time. He didn't think of himself even when it meant he was going to be suspected. He's such a champ. I don't know what to say. He's such a champ. And I think Goda really deserves everything. But yeah, that's it for my tier list this time around. Let me know. Do you agree with this tier list? Do you not? And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. And I'll see you next time. Bye guys. Mereva.